So the canon typical Igbo person is talkative, emotional, mercantile, and a dancer.
Let's talk about it.
So the canon typical Igbo person is talkative, emotional, mercantile, and a dancer. These are the top stereotypes you'll find if you ask those who profess to be in the know about Igbo people. That not only do we love to talk, we love words. If an Igbo man hears a word he doesn't recognize, he'll ask the meaning. Unless he's feeling shy, in which case he'll look it up later. And best believe in a few days you'll hear him using it, savoring the feel in his mouth, talking it up and down like a new pair of shiny shoes. You'll also hear that the Igbos are a people of big feelings, that half our language is melodramatic exclamations of woe. Ewo, chai, che, are chief favorites of mine. We wail, we weep, we rage. What we feel is on our face and in our words, and it's almost never chill. Thirdly, if there's buying and selling to be done, the Igbos are there. You'll hear this. We're wizard hustlers held back only by our high minded principles. And finally, fourthly, you'll hear that we move like wires conducting electricity effortlessly as per design with a joy or at least a trance like hypnosis unmatched by any other experience, except perhaps sex. Now, there are good reasons for these notions to be circulating. The fire for the smoke is plenty. That's a subpart of the talk thing, by the way. The Igbos love a proverb, love a wise saying, a pithy axiom, a turn of phrase. Anyway, to start, there are good reasons for the Igbo love of talk. We recorded our history and collective knowledge orally for millennia, like many cultures, including pre-colonial Irish peoples and pre-antiquity Greeks, for instance. For so long, by some accounts, from as early as 10,000 BCE, this cultural group used story, rhyme, and poetry to log all that they discovered, understood, and experienced, like a vast cosmology so comprehensive there are scientists today using it to bridge the illusory gap between spirituality and quantum physics. Medicinal sciences of herbs, chemicals, psychotherapy, and functional movement, a legacy that culminated in the great crisis of 2010 when Adao Nubog decided to study something other than medicine at university, and all my relatives lost their collective minds. Anyway, when you record things via speech and memory for so long, you end up with an epigenetic compulsion towards oral communication. Moreover, when the British were peak Britishing in what would become Nigeria during the colonial era, they set up a situation where to be useful to and more like them meant to be marginally safer from death or destitution. So, speaking the King's English to an excellent standard, a standard beyond even what the native speakers could manage, this became a much valued characteristic. And the thing about colonization is it goes on for so long, you forget that those adaptations were even learned in the first place. You feel you can't imagine yourself otherwise. And besides, language is a self propulsive thing. Parents will speak to their kids the way they know how to speak, and those kids will in turn adopt it accordingly. So, the big feelings thing, then, secondly, I would say, is largely because the modern world has only known an Igbo culture forged in the hellfires of slavery, colonial decimation, and civil war, with a side of famine and impoverishment. There has been much to wail and gnash teeth over, much to rage over, like when slave trade era Jamaican plantation owners forever changed the population trajectory of the entire ethnicity by combining a preference for Igbo slaves because they had farming skill and collectively held agricultural science knowledge with a tendency for such cruel treatment. They had to keep restocking on the regular, or when they broke the literal and metaphorical backs of Igbo chiefs to force them to dismantle their freedom loving, broadly egalitarian council run villages in favor of an extractive empire colony, designed only to convert every part of the nature and land into British wealth. Or when the unstably cobbled together Nigeria that the British reluctantly handed over to the new post colonial government treated Igbos in such a way that felt like the last and final insult they could tolerate, and a push for secession and an independent state culminated in a devastating civil war that ultimately saw millions dead, and even more displaced. Not to talk of the subsequent asset seizure that saw most Igbos stripped of all they owned and given £20 to start over with. These are bodies and a collective unconscious laden with so much grief, so much fury. I know that it took me personally about 3 years to weep myself dry and heal. And while some of that salt was an account of personal tragedies like my father's death or the rapes and assaults I experienced, etc., at least some was a multi generational ache bigger than just me. Anyway, I do think, besides all of that, and the impact of the last millennia or so on the emotional dispositions of the Igbo peoples, there is also a genetic physiological tendency towards physical sensitivity, but we'll come back to that on the dancing point. Meanwhile, and next, let's unpack the mercantile thing. Because really, if I were going in order, this would have been at the top. If Igbos are known to be anything, it is merchants and market goers. Enter an Igbo person's shop and you are buying something. I'm so sorry, you thought you came to browse? This woman has sized you up to know how to best explain the item you just glanced at as the answer to your heart's desire, your deepest desire. Now, we are never escaping these allegations because even the literal cosmology of the Igbo peoples, our analogy for how the universe functions and came to be, is literally founded on the metaphor of a marketplace, one that converges in a 4-day cycle. Eke, Orie, Afo, and Nkwo. These are the 4 days time can be divided into because each is a distinct kind of combination of all the factors and motion and matter of the universe. And after the fourth kind, we get the first again, and the cycle repeats over and over as long as the universe persists. Everything in the universe comes together, collides in a manner determined by the chi or core essence of each of the components. And this exchange of energies, this combination of potential into some actualization or other, is what a market is, as far as Odinani, Igbo traditional cosmology goes, anyway. As components of the universe ourselves, we are no different. Our inherent potential, our chi, is here to converge and collide with other potential in the universe into some beautiful, dynamic shape of exchange. It's true on the subatomic level, it's true of chemistry, it's true of biology, and it's true too on the sociological level. Life, according to the Igbos, is about nurturing, understanding, and being led by your chi, your shape of inherent potential, into some actualization, into something beautiful that you then bring to the marketplace of society to exchange with others. And moreover, that actualization process of your chi manifesting into the skill or art or wisdom that you bring to society's marketplace is itself the result of the same process playing out on all the levels. It is the subatomic, the chemical, the biological, and the sociological collisions between your inherent composition, your chi, and the surrounding environment that will shape and develop you into your actualized, manifested, realized selves. Igbo towns and villages were always designed around the marketplace for this reason, and Igbos will literally run small buy and sell empires as hobbies, even today. The other aspect of this marketplace and convergence thing is community and collectives. The Igbos are very collectivist, huge on family, huge on events, on socializing, on parties, on tribe, which obviously checks out. If the foundational logic of a group of people is that the universe is a non-stop party of collision and exchange, you can appreciate why a person alone makes no sense to them, to us. Without us, who do I collide with, to exchange with, in order to manifest into existence? Without us, who am I, etc. Practically, beautifully, we see both sides of this all come together in the Igbo practice of apprenticeship, Igbaboy, where business owners essentially, as standard, will seed the new business of one of their young associates. You work in my shop for a bit, I buy you a shop of your own to run, you hire some young hotshot to work in your shop, he works for your shop for a bit, and then you in turn buy him a shop of his own, and on the cycle goes. All right, so what about the dancing thing? I wager that much like the talkativity thing, millennia upon millennia of Igbo peoples using rhythm and sound to coordinate human collaboration and embed and adhere information to memory, has etched a sensitivity to rhythm and sound into the DNA telomeres passed from generation to generation until we arrive at me, a woman so dyspraxic I walk into doors several times a day, but add music and watch me move like water. Anyway, whatever the why of it, the fact of the matter is self evident. Igbo people dance like the music enters our body to play us like an instrument. And oh my, the transcendent joy of it all. Chai, I genuinely think that there are certain songs that if you play them at my funeral, I will rise for at least one more dance. Now, I'm laughing to myself at the imaginary skit of trying to leave the dance floor to go back to the dead, but the DJ keeps you trapped with bangers. Anyway, speaking of me, I am as usual a strange member of this club. You'll notice that come up a lot in this podcast. Autistic but extremely social, a leftist who worked in venture capital, an Igbo person who doesn't properly speak the language or do big feelings, actually. And up until 3 years ago, I didn't even necessarily think of myself as a true member or carrier of this culture. The first factor is the obvious truth of having spent most of my life far outside of the ancestral lands and the population density of my people. While in Nigeria, we lived in Lagos and we spoke English at home, and I only went to my father's village once as a child for his funeral. And then I moved to Ireland and I didn't visit Nigeria again until last year. The compounding factor was that in my adolescence, I went through a relatively classic immigrant child phase of feeling cripplingly ashamed of my difference, and thus very keen to eschew all of it and assimilate into, in this case, Irishness as far as possible. And by the time I got over it, I just went from active rejection of the culture to a muted disinterest or neutrality. It felt like a thing that existed in my life, but also had nothing to do with me, like a weird old cloak you inherited. It's in your closet, but you have no context for it, and so no way to appreciate it. And actually, maybe you rather feel like it doesn't go with your aesthetic. Thankfully, the multi year uninterrupted navel gazing that unearthed my diagnoses also helped me finally unpack my Igbo-ness, to understand how much I did have in common with my people, to feel like I could even say that, my people, without cringing or feeling like a fraud. So now I'm learning more and more Igbo and delighting in the ways that this knowledge of the culture and the sense of connection deepens my enjoyment of all the Igbo-est parts of me, like my obsession with kinship and love and community, my feral relish for any opportunity to dance, and hypnotic effect of tone and rhythm on my mind and my body, my tendency to pontificate verbosely just for the fun of it. And there is still so much to discover and deepen understanding of and affection for. I want to someday be fluent in the oh so beautiful music and poetry of the Igbo language. I want to actually visit my village properly as an adult and meet everyone. I also want to meet these umwada all over the world that I keep hearing about, meet all my namesakes and all the overachieving first daughters trying to hold the world together. I think we'll have a lot in common. Anyway, on a final note, before anyone talks, know that I am very comfortable with my mosaic identity, with the fact that there's no washing off the Irishness from my Igbo, or the fact that I feel Nigerian, not Biafran, and I loved the Yoruba language and the culture long before I came around to sorting out my internalized self-hate and reclaiming the Igbo-ness I had tossed aside. And I wouldn't want to wash any of that off. I love me as I am, in my full cultural mongrel strangeness and beauty. So there you go. That's Igbo heritage for you. Have a nice day.